Welcome to Living Truth. I'm Angela James. Together with John Usher, we invite you to dialogues designed to awaken you to truth, enlighten you to who you are, and to invite you to live a reality that you want. Okay, today, 12th of April, 2022. Today is the Neptune and Jupiter conjunction, when Neptune and Jupiter come together in the sign of Pisces, which is John's birth sign. And a fitting day, fitting energies for us to start to reveal the body of work that has been building with and for us over the last 30-ish days, I would say. Hey. So
30-ish.
welcome. Yeah. Sorry, say again.
30-ish.
30-ish. So welcome to the Living Truth podcast this afternoon. I'm Angela James, and I am with my amazing colleague,
John Usher.
Of Mind Matter Matters. Yeah, I got it right. And today we are going to be sharing with you part of the journey that we've been on in the last 30 days and what the result has been. So, John, would you like to take it away?
Sure. I wasn't expecting that one. Living Truth is a extension of a challenge that Angela and I started a while ago, 30-ish days ago.
40-ish. It was like 40-ish. But
40,
the first 10 days, we didn't know what the heck we would do.
Yeah. 40-ish days ago, and it was about accessing consciousness, and we used podcast by, what's that lady's name?
Shannon O'Hara.
Shannon O'Hara from Access Consciousness, and she set us off on an interesting little journey. What was your take on the journey so far?
To say the least interesting. So the roller coaster ride that we've been on has been ups and downs and curves and swerves, and just really interesting in terms of how we've both grown and evolved in the last 30-ish days. I mean, like on steroids, the growth has been incredible. So yeah, the reference point for us started off with Access Consciousness. I was introduced to Access Consciousness again. I've come across it a few years ago when I had my Access Bars run. Introduced by Lisa McAllister and also Michelle Vincent, and then kind of promptly put it back into the storage cupboard where it kind of the whole concept grew cobwebs for me. And last year, when I was going through my whole shedding period and process, which you've all heard ad nauseum, my very good friend Tracy Knight in Maritzburg did some Access Consciousness, a little bit of Access Consciousness absent healing with me, and also put me onto a podcast. It wasn't Shannon's podcast, but it was one that introduced me to looking for Shannon O'Hara's podcast. The next thing that happened was I was listening to a few episodes before I kind of roped John in, and I listened to one on one of her money podcasts. I can't remember exactly which one it was. And based on what John and I had been working on together in terms of our own consciousness, it blew my mind. And I think it was a Sunday that I sent it across to you, and we had a chat the following Tuesday morning. And that's kind of where our journey really started. How many podcasts would you say we've done in the 40-ish days, 40 or so days?
Quite a few. I think part of our challenge we've probably gone through more than 30.
Yeah.
But I think individually we've gone through a lot more than that. There was days I was listening to 2 or 3 podcasts a day.
Yeah.
And often repeating them because there's so much information. You get bombarded with so much stuff. You got to hold on. I just need to consolidate all of this overwhelming information in my head and actually, do I believe it? Do I make sense of it? And all that kind of thing. So, yeah, quite a few. Huh?
Yeah, I know. And very much credit to Access Consciousness for being the trigger, I would say, that released a whole lot of stuff for John and myself, and also a lot of consolidating of the work that we've individually done into what we now know as Living Truth. I think Living Truth was born around about day 20, where we came up with the name, round about there. And John, as he's apt to do with his incredible brain, started working on our own version of what Access Consciousness calls their clearing statement. So John started to, because he's not the one to follow the crowd. John will be the one to break the glass ceiling. And as he's apt to do, started the work. And that's what you do. You don't like following the crowd, and it's awesome. So he started to smash the glass ceiling and then like, no, I've got to come up with my own statement. And he started that ball rolling, and with lots and lots of discussion and lots of honing and refining, we now have our own living truth statement. So seeing as you're the genius in terms of who started this whole process off, would you like to talk a little bit about, I don't know whether you want to introduce the statement now or later, or do you want to talk a little bit about your journey in terms of starting off at that point of creating our own version, and where we are now without, maybe we should hold off on revealing what the statement is right now.
Yeah, no, I also think so. We'll talk about that shortly. So for me, and again, all credit to Access Consciousness in terms of their clearing statement. You know, they got this whole POD/POC statement, and the intent is to clear away negative perspectives, negative points of view, and open yourself up to the infinite fields of possibilities. Wonderful. What what also stood out for me, what became very apparent in the statement, is it was a very away from statement. Now, part of the polarizing, the way we collect, sort, analyze, critically evaluate information, we have what they call motivational direction. So you have a towards option and you have an away from option. So my natural style is more towards. And I felt that the statement that they had was very away from. So they were clearing stuff. And what was bothering me is they weren't replacing that clearing with something else. And, you know, you and I, our discussions around identity, and there's an inevitability of identity, and our behavior is generated because of identity. I realized that a lot of what they were clearing was as a direct result of believing who they were, who I am. So I started working on a statement, which we now call an activation, for opening the heart towards a identity that is more in tune for abundance, or with abundance, which is field of opportunities. We like the opportunity thing. We like the abundance thing. So it's not just removing, it's now adding.
Yeah, I think that, in the discussions that we went through was that, in as much as the clearing statement is very powerful, where we got to
Very
with
powerful.
it was, and it is powerful, there's no question. I mean, it helped me enormously. And it's not to take anything away from what Access Consciousness does, but for me and us and the work that we've been doing with natural law, the work that we've been doing with principles, it was one-dimensional in the sense that there was a clearing, and the question that we got to was, now you've cleared, so what? And that's not to say, again, that they don't connect with abundance. They do very deeply on every level of expression. They, you know, a lot of the affirmations and work that they are doing is about bringing in a different future and bringing in abundance. When we go back to natural law, and when we clear stuff, there's a vacuum. And we now, and the other part of what we've brought in with our activation is that part of what we want to fill the vacuum with, which is a lot more deliberate, and bringing in the balance between clearing, and one of the words that we use, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, and seeding. So nature always abhors a vacuum, and if we're not deliberate in terms of our intention of filling the vacuum, anything will do. And that's oftentimes why we find ourselves, I'm not speaking for Access Consciousness, I wouldn't dream of doing that or being that arrogant, but in my own life, a lot of where I have found myself in repetitive behaviors is where I've done the clearing, but I haven't replaced it with anything more positive, and more connected to natural law. And I think that that was the glaring hole that you identified for yourself, which started you on the journey of, okay, we need to kind of come up with our own.
Absolutely. So I tie in with what you're saying exactly. The void that was left for me was then filled in by habit. So the old identities or the old ways of thinking, there was remnants of habits left behind. And now there's void in our life, and now what do you fill it with? So, your subconscious mind does what it does best, fills that void, and it just repetitive behaviors that we had. So we slip into the old behaviors. You do all the clearing work, and well, for me, so I was slipping into the old behaviors again, and I thought, no, we need to fill that with something that we want rather than something
Yeah.
that we don't want, and move towards an outcome rather than just moving away from. And I'm happy for them moving away from, and also just all credit to Access Consciousness. We, myself and Angela, did not pursue, all of their courses in great detail. We kind of stuck to the podcasts that we got from Shannon O'Hara. So they might be, I don't know, they might be towards stuff that they have, might be seeding stuff that they have.
And I think that's an important point that you're making in terms of we're not sitting in judgment at all in terms of what that. In fact, they do profound work and have touched many people's lives and made a significant difference. So it's, absolutely. Me too. We would never have embarked on the journey that we're on now if it had not been for gaining access to the information that Shannon puts out on her podcast. It's if anybody who wants to go and listen, it's well worth the listen, called Consciousness Anywhere. And a huge big thank you, shout out to them for the awakening that they have stimulated for both of us and for how we birthed living truth as a result of engaging in Access Consciousness. So never to take anything away from them, we're not in competition with, we haven't plagiarized, we're coming up with our own stuff that's based on our frames of reference, our own personal journeys, the work that John and I have done over many, many years individually, and some of the work we've done collectively. So we are very, very careful to honor and very humbled to honor Access Consciousness and all that they have done and contributed to us. So there's no taking away from anything that they've done. And certainly it is really honoring the path that they've opened for us. Thank you to Shannon O'Hara, Gary Douglas, and to Dain here, and to Dr. Dain here for their amazing consciousness and the shift that they have managed to create through their work. I mean, Gary Douglas has been doing this for over 20 years. So, so it's been interesting. So where we are now is we're moving into introducing to you what our opening affirmation is. And John and I are trying very hard to keep this to 15 to 20 minutes. And we're probably over the time already. I don't know that I haven't, because I'm not on StreamYard today, I can't see the time, and I didn't think to start off the timer when we started. So I think it's the appropriate time to start switching into a little bit about the impact or a little bit about the statement without telling you what the statement is yet. But a little bit about the statement and the impact of our statement of living truth, the opening activation, and what it's done for us. And as George, George? I don't know where George came from. John has said already, alluded to, is that there are two parts to the words opening activation. The one is the opening up, and the other is the activation. And it's very much the act, and it's very much in keeping with the energies that are abounding around us at the moment, and that is the opening up of the heart chakra. Now, the funny side to the story is I'm all here, up here, and John is all here down on the ground. And when you bring the two, if you imagine energy in two triangles, referred to as involution and evolution, I'm the one that works, not to say that John doesn't, but I work primarily with the involution energies, bringing from spirit into matter. And John is an absolute genius at bringing matter back into spirit. And so the place that our work intersects is none other than in the heart. And so part of what we do in bringing the two energies together is, and it's happened for me, I know that it's happened for you, is that it's brought about the activation of the heart. Now, the greatest and longest journey on the planet is the journey from head to heart. And John will share a little bit of his aha, especially when we've got big foreheads too. It's even more challenging.
There's a lot of space to hang out in here. Lots of space. I like hanging out. It's my favorite space to hang out.
Absolutely. And so working with these energies ourselves, what's been happening over the last few weeks is really the opening activation of coming from a heart-centered space and being wholehearted. And again, another person that I would like to just shout out to as well is Brené Brown and the work that she does in terms of, particularly at the moment that we're looking at, is gifts of imperfection, which is all about, and her research talks all about how wholehearted people engage in the world. So there's little bits of information that have come in to influence our own thinking, but the work that we are creating is from our own consciousness. And I think, yeah, just to make mention before I hand back to John, is that there is nothing really original or new. I wouldn't say original, but there's nothing really new in the world of natural law. What is new is the interpretation that we put on it. And that really is where we find ourselves now. So I'm going to hand that over back to you for you to comment.
Yeah, nothing new under the sun. Everything that was will be, everything that will be was. Absolutely nothing new. Yeah, so in terms of that journey from the head to the heart, I can absolutely testify. I put my own hand up and hereby testify that I am a process addict. And the whole thing of process. And
can I join you on that?
sure,
Okay,
we can stand and swear together. And it's about living in the head. And I have most of my life kind of executed my personal development and spiritual walk out of the head, which, you know, in hindsight is just crazy, but it is what it is.
It takes us so far on our journey, and then we kind of hit a wall and kind of going, WTF.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I think I hit the wall, you know, around the time when we started the Access Consciousness podcast, is I had hit the wall. And their information and just perspective of the world was just so refreshing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Ignited that journey that I was, you know, started taking from the head down to the heart. And that's what the statement does for me. I am all in the head. I have reasons, treasons, and seasons for every word interaction with everybody that I deal with. And I overthink to the nth degree. And the joy for me around the statement is it absolutely gets me out of the head and allows me to drop down into the heart. And, you know, as a result of being in the head, anxiety is one of those things that just chases away peace and flow and awe and wonder. So, you know, trying to reason everything in the noggin is not always the best way to work out your spirituality. And yeah, and nothing with it, with a statement is just there were some nights, you know, so I've had a lot of stuff happening.
Oh, Cook, sorry, hold on.
It's your turn.
No.
It was my turn last week.
Yes, I know. Sorry. Oh, goodness grief. Okay, let me just turn this sound down on this. I forgot about all of this. I love it that we can just be normal and natural and do things like that. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think the other thing in terms of what you're saying as well, the journey from head to heart, is that we often try to do our spiritual walk, a spiritual path in our head and rationalize and justify, and you know, that's the land of judgment. It's the land of separation. Not altogether. I mean, we come up with some really cool stuff out of our heads, but when we live completely in our head without balancing it with the heart energy, we lose a sense of connection to compassion, to caring, to nurturing, and very much a lot more of the feminine energies. And it really is about getting into that balance of the math. Don't get us wrong when we say this. We're not saying there's anything wrong with the mental body, but what we are saying is when you're imbalanced and staying stuck in the head, that's where the problem's coming. So the mental body has a very important and significant role to play. And for me, it's very much more, it's masculine energy as opposed to the feminine energy. And the heart space is a lot more feminine. And it's about bringing the balance together, because if you, and again, for my favorite subject on the whole world, in the whole world, sacred geometry, the activation of the body of light takes place in the heart chakra. And it is the union of the masculine and the feminine that takes place within the heart. So we're not going counter to or judging or kind of swinging and polarizing into it's either head or heart. It's not that, it's both and.
No.
And that's very much part of our opening activations, to bring those energies in. I think when we were talking about it the other day, when we start to talk about what is it, it's an energy statement. And it's a statement of where we are accessing and connecting to consciousness, to universal truth. It is about, it's an affirmation statement. And I know you talk about it being a prayer, and doing it very prayerfully. And that in that statement, we're also giving ourselves permission to access. And when I say access, again, I'm not kind of copying off access consciousness, just using the word access, but to connect with the universe, to connect with whatever that power that is bigger than you is called, whether you call it God, universe, cosmic consciousness, divine intelligence, or whatever label you choose to put on it. We are also, I think, very important as well, while we're talking about this, is we are not prescribing any sense of religious belief system. We are not creating a cult. We are not going into any of those things. What we are doing is we're accessing consciousness, the way and truth in the manner in which it works, has worked for us, and in the manner in which we hope that it's going to work for others. And it really is about entering into that space of co-creation with a power much bigger than ourselves, and becoming part of the solution and not living in the problem. So, John.
Yeah. So for me, exactly that. The statement is sectioned off, and each section has a specific energy that's associated with it. The energy is associated to the knowledge that's behind that. So when we say in the statement, you're connecting with the knowledge that's behind it. You connect with the energy that is behind that statement. And for me, it's about giving the universe, God, consciousness, permission to affect change. Because this is the whole thing, is I don't always have the capacity to reason it here, which really can be frustrating. And just, I got to sit back and acknowledge the fact that there is a higher power at work. And when I am in the anxiety, when I'm in the overthinking space, I start with the activation statement as an affirmation. And every time I'll say it, I'll just connect with a different section of it, become aware of the energy and the information that is behind it. Because, it's still heady, so I am connecting with the information. But it is about giving God, the universe, permission, consciousness, the permission to do the work for me. And I find what it does for me is that it drives out the anxiety. It brings me a sense of peace. And as soon as I get the peace, I connect with a better perspective of the world around me, which just opens my eyes to the opportunities, the abundance of opportunities that are around me. And I can make better choices for myself.
So one of the things that you're saying around the statement itself is it's creating the opening, and that opening for God consciousness to come in. It's creating the space. It's not so much about creating a vacuum and then hoping like something's going to happen in a vacuum. It's a deliberate engagement in order to be able to create the space for the management of our emotions. It's not that we don't feel the emotions, but it allows us to better attune to them, move through them, and open up to whatever opportunities, the randomness of the opportunities that we find in the universe. And it's about being receptive. And again, there's the feminine energy. Once we've received what it is from God, higher power, we then go into the more masculine energy, and that's the energy of doing. And in fact, the shift that we've seen in the last 2 days, in fact, has shifted more from the being part of the statement, which is the first half, or our first 30, 40 days has all been about being, or finding our way to being, should I say. It wasn't about being in the beginning at all. It wasn't about that in the beginning at all. But it now is starting to move into the doing, and that is part of, when we get into the statement, that is a part of it. So as John says, it chunks down into different pieces of the statement, each having a specific influence aspect, each having a different function. And so as you join us on this journey, We will be sharing with you some of the deeper learning behind each of the components. So for today, what we are going to be doing is really just revealing the statement to you. And I think we'll even leave off how it's impacted on us personally into another podcast, because we are starting to rapidly run out of the time frame that we've set for ourselves. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm quite happy to leave the sharing of what it's done for us to the next podcast. So what we're talking about really is an inner shift. It's the inner work that we need. It's a tool to facilitate the inner work and transformation that we need to connect with in order to be able to access who we truly are and to live our truth.
It's absolutely, for me, clearing the old to make space for a new awareness, a new consciousness. I'm sick of my old way of dealing with life.
Absolutely.
So get it out of the way and open yourself up to a new perspective.
Yep, absolutely.
Abundance.
Absolutely. And again, John has just alluded to, we can keep doing what we've always done, expecting to get different results. And that's Einstein's definition of insanity, and it just doesn't work. And there's a whole lot of science behind even that statement, which John, I'm sure, will talk a lot more about because it's his wheelhouse. So the inner shift, we're inviting you to join us and embark upon an inner shift for you to be able to access and live your truth. And as we do so, it's about being more and more aware of how you can engage and connect with the world and affect a state of change for yourself, for those near and dear to you, because it definitely has an impact on the people around us, and on the size and scope of whatever your size and scope of your world is. So, John, would you like to reveal the statement?
Oh, really?
We're going to do it together. Or we're going to do
it together. We'll do it together. Come on.
The short one, eh? The shortened version.
The short one.
Okay.
The short version.
All right.
You see, we've even got a secret code between us, the short one and the long one. It's like a real cult. What do you mean we're not starting a cult yet? Come on. Yes.
Cult-like. Very different to cult. Okay, so cult-like, which is what Jim Collins talks about. And it's not a cult. Very different. Okay, so a 1, 2.
A 2. A 1, 2, 3. We dissolve and seed.
In and out.
In and out.
B
and D.
Crowns. Fish. Cornucopia. And more. In grace. So that's the simple statement.
And dissolve and seed. In and out, B and D. Crowns, fish, cornucopia, and more in grace. Love it.
Simple statement, and yet it's power packed with incredible amounts of punch. And we'll share a little bit more about our own stories and journey on our next podcast. So we invite you to join us as we dissolve and seed, in and out, B and D, crowns, fish, cornucopia, and more in grace. Join us as we activate the opening of our hearts, as we assist and support other people in opening the activation of their hearts, so that we can come together to leave a legacy of building a new and different future for ourselves, for our children, for our children's children. So and for the next 7 generations. And so it all comes together in one simple statement. Years and years and years of work comes together in one simple statement. And that's the opening activation from living truth. So I think that's about it from me. What about you today?
That's all from me. Yeah, come join us on the journey. Come hear about the statement. Learn what's behind each phrase. It's crazy. It sounds crazy, and even when you know what it means, it's also crazy. But it's meant to be crazy so that it gets you out of your head and plonks you butt first in your heart.
So what we can also say to you is, if there's anything that's coming up for you right now, any anxiety or anything, just take hold of the statement. We'll put it up on Facebook, under the Living Truths Facebook page. Get a hold of the statement and just start saying it when you're feeling anxious, even if you don't know what the heck it means or what you're doing with it. If your intention is to create shift and transformation, the statement will already start working for you, because it's linked to universal energy and natural law. So yeah, that is definitely the last from me this afternoon, John.
Peace.
In awe and wonder. As we live as we come together to live our truth. Thanks
Love
everybody
it.
for watching, and keep tuned in as we reveal more and more to you over the next weeks of what our opening activation is all about. God bless. Thank you for tuning into Living Truth. Our goal is to carry a message of purpose and meaning to those who are seeking to be, do, and have a full, joyous, happy, and abundant life. If you know of any dreamers, truth seekers, visionaries, light workers, and wisdom keepers who would benefit from our content, please feel free to share our material with them. We would appreciate your time in leaving us a 5-star review on this channel, and visit us on www.angelajames.co.za and John Asher on www.mindmattermatters.com.